Chapter 4540. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard that Xiao Rojin actually asked Wang Yanhan to cut off one of his arms, their faces all darkened. They didn't expect Xiao Rojin to be so vicious. Not only did she greedily want to take the cultivation resources from them, she even wanted to cripple Wang Yanhan's arm. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't intend to take Xiao Rojin's life before, then now, she wanted to kill her. When Bewitching noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he already understood her thoughts. In fact, his thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. This woman was so vicious. If Wang Yanhan continued to stay in the Raging Flame school, he would sooner or later suffer a great loss in Xiao Rojin's hands. Although there was originally a little room for reconciliation, it was obviously gone now. Xiao Rojin, you're too vicious. Wang Yanling looked at Xiao Rojin with disgust. He had just joined the Raging Flame school not long ago, and knew that this woman was always finding trouble with his elder brother. However, he didn't expect this woman to be so excessive as to make such a request. I'm already being very tolerant. Xiao Rojin's eyes were full of disdain. If I directly tell this to Steward Wu, what kind of punishment do you think will you receive? Do you think you can still stay in the Raging Flame school? She wanted to drive Wang Yanhan and the others out so that they would have no place in Rong'an City. As long as Wang Yanhan was driven out by the Raging Flame school, no matter if it was the Azure Dragon school or other forces, they would not take her in. Since they had offended her, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Wang Yanhan and the others' hearts sank. If they couldn't explain this matter clearly, they were afraid that they really wouldn't be able to stay in the Raging Flame school. It was obvious that once this name was confirmed, what kind of eyes would people use to look at them in the future? Even if the Raging Flame school didn't drive them out, they couldn't continue to stay. Xiao Rojin's move was really vicious. Xiao Rojin, what right do you have to say that these pills are yours? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. This woman was really full of drama. Do I need proof? Xiao Rojin retorted. I'm a cultivator of the Xiao family. Can you cultivators from the lower realm compare to me? As long as I stand here, I am the truth. Looking at Xiao Rojin's arrogant appearance, Yi Haomiao couldn't help but say, don't flatter yourself. Aren't you just a branch family member? You're always putting on airs all day long. Don't tell me you think you're the young miss of the main house? As soon as these words were spoken, Xiao Rojin's expression immediately darkened. Indeed, she had always been using the name of the Xiao family. Everyone actually knew that she was just a member of a branch family. However, she still felt very unhappy to be directly exposed like this. My wife is an alchemist, and these pills were refined by her. Do you think an alchemist is rich? Or a cultivator from a branch family like you is rich? Bewitching's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, flashed with a cold light. His deep voice was full of disgust, and the meaning of his words directly refuted everything Xiao Rojin had said before. Alchemist. When everyone heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually an alchemist, their expressions all changed. What did alchemists have the most? Naturally, it was pills. Chapter 4541. When Xiao Rojin heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was a pill refiner, her expression changed. Pill refiner? This woman from the lower realm was actually a pill refiner? She had never understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had so many pills. Until now she finally understood. So this woman was actually a pill refiner. She could not believe that this woman from the lower realm had the identity of a pill refiner. One had to know that the higher one's cultivation, the fewer pill refiners there were, because most people had limited energy. Even in a place like the upper realm, as long as you had the identity of a pill refiner, you would be respected no matter where you were. Bailey Hongzhuang looked coldly at Xiao Rojin, then said to the surrounding cultivators, this woman coveted my pills, so she found such an excuse to frame us. Indeed, we are cultivators from the lower realm and have no background. But I am a pill refiner. Isn't it normal for me to have pills? Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a cold light, and her voice was loud and clear. Since Xiao Rojin wanted to make a big deal out of this, she would let everyone see what kind of face this woman had. At this time, Yi Haomiao also stood out and said, everyone, don't be deceived by this woman's appearance. She was only a cultivator of the Shao clan's branch family. Compared to ordinary cultivators, her usual cultivation resources were indeed much more abundant. However, so many healing pills were not something that she could take out. She only said that because she saw our medicinal pills and became greedy. That's why she said that. She's really too vicious. Xiao Rojin had already realized that things were not going well when Bewitching revealed Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. If everyone believed her before, then after this incident, they believed Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others even more. She could not let things continue like this. Otherwise, she would be the one who would find it difficult to establish herself in the Raging Flames sect in the future. Even with the Shao clan's identity, no one dared to say anything to her. But just their gazes were not something she could bear. You are a pill refiner just because you say so? It's obvious that these pills are all in my name. It's just to cover up this point. That's why I made up such an excuse. Xiao Rojin's face was full of disdain. No matter what the situation was, she could only continue to act. Once she showed the slightest bit of guilt, she would lose. Everyone, don't be deceived by them. This Wanyan Han originally had enmity with me. Naturally, he took advantage of me, and even poured dirty water on me. Seeing the two sides arguing, everyone was puzzled. For a moment, they didn't know who to believe. Bailey Hongzhuang found it funny. Am I not an alchemist? But was this something that could be covered up by lying? Don't worry, I'll head directly to the Alchemist Guild very soon. At that time, we'll know who's telling the truth. Xiao Rojin had obviously made up her mind to not let Bailey Hongzhuang have the slightest possibility of evading. She immediately said, "You want to stall for time here. If I let you leave like this today, will you still stay in Rongan City? I'm not a fool. Don't use such a boring trick to deceive me. This is simple. We just need to find a witness." Chapter 45-42. Who are you looking for as a witness? Xiao Rojin asked in dissatisfaction. You are from the Raging Flames School, and we are from the Azure Dragon School. Naturally, we are looking for the stewards of both sides to be witnesses, Bewitching said coldly. He had originally planned to take Xiao Rojin's life directly, but now he felt that since Xiao Rojin wanted to play, he would play with her. It would be too easy for this woman to die so easily. Hearing that Bewitching wanted to call the stewards of both sides, Xiao Rojin's expression couldn't help but change. Once the stewards of both sides were present, and Bailey Hongzhuang really proved her identity as an alchemist, then her lie would be exposed. What? You don't dare? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and her delicate face was filled with coldness. If you admit that you are slandering us now, as long as you cripple both of your arms, we will forgive you. Bailey Hongzhuang's deep, dark eyes were filled with ridicule. After hearing this, everyone understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was mocking what Xiao Rojin had said before. After all, Xiao Rojin had asked Wanyan Han to cut off one of his arms. Your Azure Dragon School and our Raging Flames School have always had conflicts, so the steward is naturally on your side. Cut the crap and hand over my medicinal pills now. Seeing Xiao Rojin's constant refusal, everyone who didn't understand at first all understood now. No one was a fool. From Xiao Rojin's initial aggressiveness to her current evasiveness, the truth was already very obvious. I really didn't expect Xiao Rojin of the Raging Flames School to be so shameless. She kept saying that she looked down on the cultivators of the lower realm and coveted their medicinal pills. That's enough. As I said before, this kind of woman is the dirtiest. On the surface, she looks pure and lovely, but behind her back, who knows how vicious she is. From the looks of it, I feel that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching of the Raging Flames School might have died in her scheme. Didn't this matter cause an uproar in the Raging Flames School before? Maybe Xiao Rojin wanted to take the opportunity to chase him out, because Wanyan Han exposed this matter. Just when the situation was one-sided, a figure suddenly appeared beside Xiao Rojin. Xiao Rojin, what happened? Xiao Rojin, who didn't know what to do, couldn't help but light up when she heard this familiar voice. Steward's son, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others were familiar with this person. There were several stewards in the House of Raging Flames. Steward Wu was the one who dealt with them the most, And Steward's son was also one of the stewards. Manager's son is usually very close to Xiaorojin. I'm afraid he will side with Xiaorojin now. Wang Yanhan's voice was heard by Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Her expression became very complicated. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' gazes changed slightly. They already had some considerations in their hearts. After seeing that Steward's son had come, Xiaorojin immediately gained confidence and hurriedly said, "Steward's son, this woman stole my medicinal pills, and Wang Yanhan is in cahoots with them. You must help me." As Xiaorojin's voice fell, Steward's son's gaze couldn't help but fall on Wang Yanhan and Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, he already had some understanding of this matter when he was outside. He also understood that this matter was probably fabricated out of thin air by Xiaorojin. But so what? Chapter 45-43. Hurry up and take out Xiaorojin's pills. Stealing at such a young age, this is intolerable. Manager's son looked indignant, as if he couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but sigh when they saw this scene. Manager's son really knew how to put on an act. His acting ability was even better than Xiaorojin's. Manager's son, this matter hasn't been concluded yet. How can you directly conclude that it's our fault? Yi Haomiao couldn't help but retort. Manager's son's face turned cold when he saw that Yi Haomiao dared to refute him. Yi Haomiao, you have to be clear. You're from the Blazing Flames school. And now you're actually mingling with the Azure Dragon school. Are you thinking of betraying the Blazing Flame school? Steward's son, these are two separate matters. How can you mix these matters together? Wang Yanhan frowned. Although he had already guessed that Manager's son would side with Xiaorojin, it was a bit too much to go to this extent. Are you saying that I'm being unfair now? Manager's son raised his voice, the displeasure and anger in his eyes growing stronger. Wang Yanhan, don't think that you're so arrogant just because Manager Wu has taken a liking to you. How dare you challenge the authority of a manager? Why can't you tell right from wrong? Whatever you say is the truth. You don't care about the truth of this matter. Could it be that you can arbitrarily convict people just because you have a lot of power? Wang Yanhan couldn't hold it in anymore. He had never seen such an unreasonable manager. Manager's son's expression was extremely ugly after being questioned by the disciples of the Blazing Flames school one after another. He originally thought that after he spoke, Wang Yanhan and the others wouldn't dare to refute him. After all, he was a manager. If they wanted to continue staying in the Blazing Flames school, they definitely wouldn't dare to offend him. However, he didn't expect the situation to be completely different from what he expected. The people of the Azure Dragon School hadn't even spoken yet, but he was already being questioned by his own disciples. I think you're in Chao's camp, but your hearts are elsewhere. You don't want to properly stay in the Blazing Flame School anymore. Manager's son's voice was cold and full of threat. He secretly decided that when he returned this time, he would definitely punish Wang Yanhan and the others properly. If you don't want to stay, then don't. What's so rare about it? Yi Haomiao said coldly. Wang Yanhan also spoke up. I don't believe that there is no place for us in the upper realm. No matter what, we must know the truth today. Wang Yanhan was calm inside. He was indeed reluctant to leave the Scorching Flames sect. He had never thought about leaving before. But from the moment they offended Caretaker's son, he understood that it was impossible for them to remain in the Scorching Flames sect. Even if they wanted to continue staying here, with Manager's son's needle-like heart, he would definitely find trouble with them everywhere. Rather than leaving the House of Raging Flames in a sullen manner, he might as well leave now. At the very least, they would still be innocent. Following Wang Yanhan's words, Manager's son's expression became extremely ugly. He was so angry that he laughed and said, "Good. Very good. You've grown wings. Steward's son is really impressive." A mocking laugh was heard, and another figure appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Noticing this figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching couldn't help but bow. Steward Li. The person who came was none other than Steward Li of the Azure Dragon School. Chapter 45-44. Steward's son's heart skipped a beat when he saw Steward Li of the Azure Dragon clan appear. Originally, This matter should have been resolved immediately if he were to step in. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had suffered a loss, the pills had fallen into their hands. It was impossible for the Azure Dragon clan to get back at them. He didn't expect that Manager Li would appear now. Things had become difficult to handle. However, the youths of your Blazing Flames sect are very courageous. I admire them. Steward Li's gaze fell on Wanyan Han and the other two. Look at the Blazing Flames sect. It's not a big deal. Since you know Situ Chung and the others, if you're interested, why don't you join our Azure Dragon clan? Hearing this, Wanyan Han and the other two were shocked. They were still thinking about where to go after leaving the Blazing Flames sect. They did not expect the Azure Dragon clan to extend an olive branch to them. Thank you, Steward Li. Seeing this, Steward Li nodded in satisfaction. Only then did he see Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, Lani Xuan, what happened? Steward Li, Xiao Rojin discovered that I had many pills on me. She was greedy and wanted to take them away, so she found an excuse to say that I stole her pills. In fact, these pills were all refined by me. After Xiao Rojin could not win against me, their steward son began to throw his weight around and wanted to forcibly take away my cultivation resources. Steward Li nodded in understanding. Steward son, you should have heard it clearly. These pills were refined by the disciples of the Azure Dragon clan. If you want to label the disciples of the Azure Dragon clan as thieves, you must at least show enough evidence. Otherwise, I will not agree. Steward Li's aura suddenly exploded. This matter did not only concern the dignity of Bailey Hongzhuang and Lani Xuan, but also the face of the Azure Dragon clan. He would not allow the Blazing Flames sect to be labeled as such. As soon as Steward Li appeared, Steward Sun had already realized that the matter was not easy to resolve. Now that he saw the other party's aggressive manner, he could not help but frown. He had long known that everything Xiao Rojin said was fabricated, so naturally, there was no evidence. If you can't produce any evidence, you should know how to deal with this matter. Manager Li's voice was ice-cold as he said. Manager Sun's expression was complicated. He couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin with some resentment in his heart. This guy was really too stupid. The other party was clearly an alchemist, yet she actually came up with such a demonic reason. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't believe it. A smile appeared on the faces of Yi Haomiao and the others. Fortunately, Manager Li had appeared. The situation had changed once again. They wanted to see how Xiao Rojin would end this. Steward Li, Xiao Rojin not only slandered us before, but also wanted Wanyan Han's arm. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly reminded him. Since Xiao Rojin was so vicious, she must pay the same price. Manager Li naturally understood the meaning behind Bailey Hongzhuang's words at this moment. His gaze then fell on Xiao Rojin, and his voice was cold and unquestionable. Since this matter arose because of you, then it will be resolved from you. As long as you cripple both your arms and admit that everything is your slander, I will let this matter go. As soon as these words were spoken, Xiao Rojin's face immediately turned pale. Chapter 45-45. Thinking of this, Xiao Rojin hurriedly looked at Steward Sunday. At this moment, Steward Sun was her only hope. Steward Sun naturally felt Xiao Rojin's gaze. However, Steward Li's status was not inferior to his. Previously, when Steward Li was not here, it was not a big deal for him to teach the Azure Dragon Gate disciple a lesson. However, now that Steward Li was here and the Azure Dragon Gate was in the right, he naturally could not say anything more. Otherwise, if they were to get serious, the Azure Dragon Gate would not be afraid of the Blazing Flames Gate at all. Moreover, if it reached that point, the Blazing Flames Gate might even give up on him. Noticing that Steward Sun did not say a word, Xiao Rojin's face turned pale. She understood that Steward Sun had chosen to compromise, break her own arms. At this moment, Xiao Rojin really wished that none of this had happened. If she had known this would happen, she would not have been so greedy. Now that she had gone for wool and come home shorn, it was really sad. Hurry up, I don't have time to wait for you. Steward Li's voice was extremely cold. If this was the Blazing Flames Gate's own matter, it would be fine. However, they wanted to bully their Azure Dragon Gate disciple. They were simply dreaming. Xiao Rojin's eyes were slightly red. She had never suffered such grievances in her life. However, in the current situation, she had no other choice. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had cold expressions. All of this was Xiao Rojin's own doing. She deserved to be punished like this. Just as Xiao Rojin was about to harden her heart and break her own arms, a voice sounded again. Stewardly, Xiao Rojin is a member of the Xiao clan. Aren't you not giving the Xiao clan face by doing this? Suddenly hearing this voice, Stewardly could not help but frown. He did not understand who was so blind to come looking for trouble at this time. However, when Stewardly saw who it was, his expression changed. If it was an ordinary person, he could completely ignore it. However, it was the vice president of the Holy Assembly, so he had to consider it. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also noticed Gong Tianfeng. I didn't expect Gong Tianfeng to be so nice to Xiao Rojin. She's willing to stand up for Xiao Rojin at this time. Yi Haomiao felt a little strange. Logically speaking, Gong Tianfeng was an extremely selfish woman. She should have chosen to protect herself at a time like this. Just buying people's hearts. I just don't know who the real fox is, Wan Yinling mocked. President Gong, this is a matter between my Azure Dragon School and the Raging Flames School. Are you sure you want to get involved? Manager Li's face darkened. Even though Gong Tianfeng had a lot of influence in Rongan City, he could not give in on this matter. If the cultivators of the Azure Dragon clan were bullied by others, and he as the steward could not get back at them, then what cultivators would be willing to join the Azure Dragon clan in the future? Seeing Manager Li being so serious, Zhang Yunfeng frowned slightly. She originally wanted Xiao Rojin to owe her a favor. After all, it was only a matter of a few words. However, if Manager Li was so insistent, things would become a little complicated. Manager Li, actually, as long as she's willing to apologize, this matter will be over. If things get out of hand, the impact won't be too good. Gong Tianfeng's tone softened a little. She did not want to offend the Azure Dragon sect for Xiao Rojin. This was undoubtedly not worth the loss. Chapter 45-46. As soon as Stewardly finished speaking, all the cultivators present immediately understood what he meant. In fact, everyone also felt that what Gong Tianfeng said at this moment was extremely unfair. From Xiao Rojin's aggressive appearance before, if she had succeeded in slandering them, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would definitely have to bear the consequences. It was definitely not something that could be settled with just an apology. Now that they had gone for wool and come home shorn, they only needed an apology to end it. This price was too easy. Gong Tianfeng's expression was a little difficult to speak, and she was even a little angry out of humiliation. Her words just now were already softening, but Manager Li had no intention of letting her step down at all. This made her extremely unhappy. As the vice president of the Holy Assembly, she was usually respected by everyone. Most people would give her face, but Manager Li did not care about this at all. Manager Li, Xiao Rojin is not only a disciple of the Blazing Flames School, but also a member of our Holy Assembly. You mean you want to protect her? Manager Li narrowed his eyes. He did not expect Gong Tianfeng to say things to this extent. If these two people insisted on stopping them, things would be a little difficult. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Manager Li standing in front of her, and was secretly surprised. She did not expect Manager Li to be so protective of them. In fact, ever since she joined the Azure Dragon School, she did not have any sense of belonging to it. She only felt that it was a temporary shelter. However, when she saw Manager Li arguing for their sake, she changed her mind. This was a very humane force. At least this manager was not snobbish at all. He was far better than those selfish managers. Seeing that Manager Li did not back down, Gong Tianfeng's anger also rose. She immediately said angrily, "As long as I'm here today, don't even think about touching a single hair on Xiao Rojin." Xiao Rojin, who was originally helpless, suddenly had a joyful look in her eyes. As long as Gong Tianfeng protected her, she would definitely be fine. I'm a member of the Xiao family. If you treat me like this, the Xiao family will not let you off. The atmosphere suddenly froze. Both sides were in a deadlock. Manager Li looked coldly at Manager Sun, and Gong Tianfeng in front of him. With his strength alone, He was afraid that he would not be able to defeat these two people. Moreover, he still had to take care of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If that was the case, it would be difficult to get justice today. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally understood that the situation in front of them was very unfavorable for Manager Li. If they were previously filled with anger towards Xiao Rojin, after seeing Manager Li doing this for them, the anger in their hearts had dissipated a lot. Justice was in everyone's heart. Now that things had reached this point, everyone already knew the truth. I've seen shameless people before, but I've never seen both the old and the young so shameless. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. It's really an eye-opener to cover up to this extent. Manager Li, let's go back. They clearly intend to be shameless to the end today. However, anyone with a discerning eye will understand what's going on. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were merciless, every word piercing the heart. Xiao Rojin and Gong Tianfeng's faces were ugly to the extreme, but in this case, even if they refuted, it was pale and powerless, so they simply stopped talking. Chapter 45-47. Of course, we can't just let this matter go. Another loud and confident voice sounded. Hearing this voice, everyone couldn't help but turn to look in the direction of the voice. No one expected that this matter would have so many twists and turns. One person after another appeared. They didn't expect that after the vice president of the Holy Assembly, there would still be someone who dared to stand up. Was he not afraid of offending the Holy Assembly? In their line of sight, a young man slowly walked over. His handsome face was like an exquisite work of the heavens. He was elegant and unparalleled in his handsomeness. After seeing the man, many women around them had deep admiration in their eyes. Such a man was enough to make people fall in love at first sight. After seeing the man, Xiao Rojin's expression changed again and again. Such a handsome man, other than Bewitching, whom she had met before, no one else could compare to him. However, Bewitching was a cultivator from the lower realm, and this man had a dignified appearance and extraordinary temperament. Obviously, his background wasn't simple either. Immediately, she couldn't help but reach out to stroke her hair. She almost forgot what was going on in front of her. When Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching, and Wang Yinling saw the man, they couldn't help but be stunned. None of them expected to see him again here. This man was none other than Di Xiaofeng. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Wang Yinling's gaze, Di Xiaofeng quietly gave them a look. Di Xiaofeng was also very surprised. He originally thought that after coming to Rong'an City, he didn't know when he would be able to find Situ and Wang Yinling. After all, Rong'an City wasn't small. If Situ and Wang Yinling lived here very low-key, it would take some time to find them. What worried him the most was that if the two left Rong'an City, he didn't know when he would be able to find them. However, he didn't expect to see them as soon as he arrived in Rong'an City. It was really too coincidental. However, judging from the situation in front of him, they seemed to be in trouble. Who are you? Gong Tianfeng looked at Di Xiaofeng gloomily. She had never seen this person before, but she was sure that this person was definitely not from Rong'an City. However, from the aura that this person exuded, she felt that he was not an ordinary person. As the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, she had seen many people over the years. She had a good eye for people. But why was this person helping these people from the Azure Dragon sect? It doesn't matter who I am, but it's obvious that you're in the wrong, yet you're doing whatever you want just because you're from the Holy Light Assembly. Isn't that too embarrassing? Di Xiaofeng had also heard some of the content before. When he saw Gong Tianfeng being unreasonable after losing to Manager Li, he also felt speechless. How can such a person become the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly? The Radiant Sacred Assembly is becoming more and more depraved. How dare you say that about the Holy Assembly? You must be tired of living. Gong Tianfeng's expression changed. She would never tolerate anyone who spoke ill of the Holy Assembly. Listen up, Situ and the others are my friends. Let that woman break her own arms right now, and this matter will be over. Otherwise, none of you three will be able to leave today. Di Xiaofeng's voice was cold. How dare you bully my friend? You're courting death. Chapter 45-48. Thinking of this, Manager Li also nodded at Di Xiaofeng. He felt a little strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivators who just came from the lower realm. How could they know someone with such an extraordinary identity? However, on second thought, Bailey Hongzhuang had the identity of an alchemist, so it was not strange. Di Xiaofeng also nodded at Manager Li. Then his gaze fell on Gong Tianfeng and Xiao Rojin again. I also know many people from the Xiao family. How come I've never seen you before? If you use the name of the Xiao family to bully others, you should know the consequences if the Xiao family finds out. Di Xiaofeng's expression was indifferent. His gaze inadvertently swept across Xiao Rojin's face. The Di family and the Xiao family were familiar with each other. He had also gone to the Xiao family many times. Naturally, he could be sure that this person was not from the Xiao family at all. At least, she was not a direct descendant of the Xiao family. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Rojin's expression suddenly changed. You know someone from the main family? If Xiao Rojin could still maintain her calm before, she could not do so now. She knew very well that once this matter was spread back, she would definitely die. Of course. I'll cripple my arms immediately. Can you not tell the main family? Xiao Rojin hurriedly said. She didn't doubt that this person was lying, because he was too confident. Almost without hesitation, Xiao Rojin raised her hand and crippled her own arm. The intense pain caused her to groan, but she still endured it. If her arms were crippled, she would be able to recover after a period of time. If she lost her life, then there was no other way. Wanyan Han and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. They did not expect Xiao Rojin to be so straightforward when she was unwilling before. Seeing her being angry but not daring to say anything, they felt a wave of comfort in their hearts. She deserved it. However, a thought appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Previously, they had guessed whether Di Xiaofeng was related to the Di family, but Di Xiaofeng did not admit it. But now Di Xiaofeng said that he knew people from the Xiao clan. If this was true, didn't that mean that Di Xiaofeng was from the Di clan? Otherwise, Di Xiaofeng wouldn't have had the chance to come into contact with the Xiao family. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. She found that Di Beichen was also deep in thought. It seemed that they were thinking of the same problem. When Gong Tianfeng saw that Xiao Rojin had crippled her arm without saying a word, her expression became extremely ugly. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have helped Xiao Rojin. Now, not only was it useless, but she had also caused trouble. Since Xiao Rojin has already suffered greatly, let's just forget about it, Gong Tianfeng said. She did not want to stay here any longer. She just wanted to leave as soon as possible. Di Xiaofeng naturally wouldn't let Gong Tianfeng do as she wished. As the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly, the most important thing is to be fair and just. Since you're so unfair, I think you should step down from your position as the vice president. Otherwise, you'll look even worse. When he said this, Gong Tianfeng's expression became extremely ugly. Who exactly are you? What right do you have to make me step down? Chapter 45-49. I'm from the Di family. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with a cold light. His voice was calm and indifferent. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Rojin, who was still guessing in her heart, suddenly trembled and fear appeared in her eyes. Others might not know about the Di family, because the people in Rong and city simply could not come into contact with such an existence. However, as a member of the Xiao family's branch family, she had long heard of the Di family. The Di family was an existence that was not any weaker than the Xiao family. She had never thought that the man in front of her was actually a direct descendant of the Di family. In comparison, a person like him was like an ant in front of him. Gong Tianfeng frowned. Although she was the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly in Rong'an City, she simply could not come into contact with those huge families with her status. However, when she noticed Xiao Rojin's pale face, she knew that she had kicked an iron plate this time. Even if you're from the Di family, you can't control our Radiant Sacred Assembly, Gong Tianfeng hurriedly said. She had worked so hard for so many years to obtain her current status. She definitely could not lose everything like this. Coincidentally, I happen to know the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Do you think it's better for you to step down yourself, or for me to tell him, and let him step in?" Di Xiaofeng looked at Gong Tianfeng indifferently. He felt that there was no need to even make a move against this kind of person. Once these words came out, Gong Tianfeng's body trembled. Her entire body could not help but tremble. "No, you can't do this." Zhuo Hongyan was originally cultivating in the Radiant Sacred Assembly when he was suddenly disturbed. This made him very unhappy. However, after hearing the ins and outs of the matter, he did not care about getting angry and immediately rushed to the location of the incident. "Young Master Di, I'm the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly in Rong'an City, Zhuo Hongyan." Zhuo Hongyan's face was filled with smiles. Although he was only the president of the division, he already had some understanding of some of the top forces in the Shengxian continent. The Di family was one of them. Not only that, the Di family's relationship with the Radiant Sacred Assembly could be said to be extremely good. However, he didn't expect that a direct descendant of the Di family would come to a small place like Rong'an City. The most important thing was that Gong Tianfeng had a conflict with them. Wasn't she courting death? "Since the president is here, you should know what to do, right?" Di Xiaofeng said calmly. Zhuo Hongyan quickly nodded. "Of course. In fact, I've already punished her since she stopped a talented cultivator from joining the Holy Assembly. I didn't expect her to be so stubborn. I'll kick her out of the Holy Assembly now." Zhuo Hongyan turned to look at Gong Tianfeng. "From now on, you have nothing to do with the Holy Assembly. Don't use the name of the Holy Assembly when you go out in the future. Otherwise, I'll be the first to punish you if I find out." Gong Tianfeng's face was deathly pale. She had never thought that things would suddenly turn out like this. If she left the Holy Light Assembly, where should she go? She had offended quite a few people over the years. Once she lost her status, she could imagine the consequences just by thinking about it. Chapter 45-50. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were thinking about what Di Xiaofeng said. He was from the Di family. Ever since they came to the upper realm, they had always hoped to go to the Di family as soon as possible, because Di Beichen was a disciple of the Di family. However, Di Xiaofeng was actually from the Di family. He didn't go anywhere but came to Rong'an City. This couldn't be a coincidence. Di Beichen, Xiaofeng is from the Di family. Could he have been sent by the Di family to find you? Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were complicated. The situation is still unclear. Let's not expose ourselves for the time being. He believed in Di Xiaofeng's character. But ever since the matter of being chased, he had to be careful. Someone didn't want him to return to the Di family, so they did everything possible to stop him. Before figuring out whether the other party was friend or foe, he couldn't expose his identity. In fact, not to mention that Di Xiaofeng's strength wasn't simple. The middle-aged man beside him hadn't said a word since he came. However, none of them could ignore that this person was definitely a true expert. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was clear. Do you remember Xiaofeng saying that he had been hunted down before? Could it be that the people chasing after you and him are the same people? She still remembered the scene when she saved Di Xiaofeng. At that time, his injuries were very serious. If they hadn't happened to meet them, it would have been very dangerous in the dark forest. Di Beichen nodded. He also thought of this point. In fact, he instinctively didn't want to think that Di Xiaofeng was someone who didn't want him to go back. When Zhuo Hongyan made the decision, Gong Tianfeng knew that she was powerless to reverse the situation. She immediately looked coldly at Xiao Rojin. If it wasn't for helping her, how could she be reduced to such a situation? Noticing Gong Tianfeng's vicious gaze, Xiao Rojin couldn't help but shiver. However, she lowered her head and didn't say a word. By the way, since you're all here, I'll ask you about something. Di Xiaofeng looked at Zhuo Hongyan, Manager Sun, and Manager Li in front of him. He already knew that these guys were from the more outstanding forces in Rong'an City. At this moment, he didn't even care about communicating with Di Beichen and the others. He was more eager to know his brother's situation. Although they all knew that the possibility of Di Beichen being alive was very small, he still had a trace of hope. Young Master Di, please speak. We will definitely tell you everything we know. Di Xiaofeng nodded. And and Xiao Rojin. They. Di Xiaofeng's gaze fell on Zhuo Hongyan and the others. Seeing the sudden change in their expressions, he understood that these people in front of him all knew. Tell me in detail. Di Xiaofeng's voice was deep and filled with endless majesty. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Yi Haomiao and Wan Yanhan were secretly shocked. Their eyes were filled with doubt. Bewitching immediately gave them a look. Only then did they suppress the doubt in their hearts. Chapter 45-51. Not only that Bailey Hongzhuang is also a member of our Radiant Sacred Assembly. At this time, Manager's son also cupped his hands and said, That's right, they were indeed members of our Raging Flames sect. Then where are they now? Di Xiaofeng quickly asked. May I ask what is your relationship with them? Zhuo Hongyan probed. When Zhuo Hongyan raised this question, everyone's eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng. Both of them had the surname Di, so everyone couldn't help but have some guesses in their hearts. Bewitching is my younger brother. Di Xiaofeng didn't hide it at all. As soon as these words came out, everyone present felt as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. They looked at Di Xiaofeng in astonishment and couldn't recover for a moment. Xiao Rojin looked at Di Xiaofeng in a daze. Stormy waves were already surging in her heart. Weren't Bewitching and the others cultivators from the lower realm? How could they be members of the Di family? However, looking at Di Xiaofeng's serious appearance, it was obvious that what he said couldn't be a lie. At this time, Xiao Rojin was about to die from regret. If she had known earlier, she definitely wouldn't have gone against Bewitching and the others. Now, she could almost imagine what kind of anger she would have to endure later. Originally, Gong Tianfeng wanted to settle the score with Xiao Rojin, but at this moment, she no longer had this thought. She quietly stepped back and gradually retreated into the crowd. Losing the position of vice president was already very tragic, but compared to losing her life, this was nothing. Tell me, what happened to Beichun and the others? Di Xiaofeng's gaze locked onto Zhuo Hongyan and Manager Sunday. These two definitely knew the ins and outs of all this. Young Master Di, although Bailey Hongzhuang is a member of our Radiant Sacred Assembly, I really don't know what happened to her later. When she joined the Radiant Sacred Assembly, I wasn't in Rongan City. Although Gong Tianfeng obstructed her a lot, I stopped Gong Tianfeng after I returned. Previously, I said that I would punish Gong Tianfeng because of this matter. Later on, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Raging Flame School, so I don't know what happened. Zhuo Hongyan bluntly told him everything he knew. When Steward's son saw that Zhuo Hongyan had pushed all the questions to him, he secretly cursed the old fox in his heart. You said that Gong Tianfeng was looking for trouble with my sister-in-law? Di Xiaofeng's brows were tightly knitted. He had long felt that woman was an eyesore, but he didn't expect her to bully his sister-in-law before. Zhuo Hongyan nodded. Indeed, many people in Rongan City know about this. At this moment, Manager Li stepped forward and said, Young Master Di, President Zhuo is speaking the truth. Gong Tianfeng. Di Xiaofeng's face was gloomy, but Gong Tianfeng was nowhere to be seen. While they were talking, Gong Tianfeng realized that things were not going well and quickly ran away. Grandelder. Di Xiaofeng turned his head and looked at the man behind him. The man immediately cupped his fist and said, Young master, don't worry. She won't be able to escape. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone found that the man suddenly disappeared from their sight. Speak. Di Xiaofeng's gaze turned to Manager Sun, his attitude firm. Manager Sun's body trembled slightly, and even his voice was trembling. They died in the training, but this matter wasn't my responsibility, so I'm not very clear about the specific situation. Chapter 45-52. Although he already knew that this was the most likely result before he came, when he really heard the answer, he still couldn't help but feel sad. His brother's life was really too hard. He finally returned to the upper realm, but he couldn't return to the family. If only he was in the family at that time. If he could come to Rongan City earlier, maybe this wouldn't be the case. Tell me the details. Di Xiaofeng said in a deep voice. I heard that they were suddenly attacked by black-clothed men when they were training in the demonic dragon abyss. Manager Sun was drenched in cold sweat. He really didn't know much about this situation, because Wu Wenfeng was originally in charge of this. However, now that Di Xiaofeng asked him, he had to answer. While thinking, Manager Sun's gaze fell on Xiao Rojin, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Young Master Di, the person who was training with Di Beichen at that time was Xiao Rojin. Why don't you ask her? When Manager Sun proposed to let Di Xiaofeng ask Xiao Rojin, the cultivators present couldn't help but sneer. Could it be that Manager Sun is scared out of his wits? Isn't the reason why Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang are in trouble because of Xiao Rojin? Xiao Rojin previously treated Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang as cultivators from the lower realm and targeted them everywhere. I didn't expect them to have such an extraordinary background. I'm afraid she's going to be miserable now. When I first saw Di Beichen, I felt that his identity was extraordinary. I didn't expect him to have such an extraordinary background. At the same time, Xiao Rojin was already regretting it to the extreme. She was really going crazy. She couldn't understand why Di Beichen had such a deep background. So why did he pretend to be a cultivator from the lower realm in front of her? If he had said such an identity earlier, she definitely wouldn't have looked for trouble. But now that things had fallen into such a situation, she was afraid that it was useless no matter what she said. Di Xiaofeng also heard the conversation of the surrounding cultivators, and his eyes immediately locked onto a person behind him. What did you just say? Beichen's death is related to Xiao Rojin? The man suddenly became nervous when Di Xiaofeng stared at him. He nodded affirmatively. That's what everyone said. The news came from the Raging Flames sect. Oh right, if you don't believe me, you can ask Wanyan Han. He's Di Beichen's senior, so he knows better. Wanyan Han? Di Xiaofeng frowned. Who is Wanyan Han? At this moment, Wanyan Han walked in front of Di Xiaofeng. I am. You're Beichen's senior? Wanyan Han nodded slightly. That's right. Beichen and Hong Zhuang are my junior brothers and sisters. They joined the Inferno school because I was there. Can you tell me what happened? Di Xiaofeng's tone softened a bit. Facing Beichen's friends, he naturally wouldn't be so overbearing. Wanyan Han quietly looked at Di Beichen. In fact, he felt that the situation in front of him was very strange. Di Beichen was clearly here, but Wanyan Han was still asking around about Di Beichen. However, even though he was full of doubts, since this was something Di Beichen decided, he naturally had to help cover it up. Chapter 45-53. When I rushed over after knowing the situation, Beichen and Hong Zhuang were already gone. Every time this matter was brought up, Wanyan Han felt that Xiao Rojin was extremely hateful. It was fortunate that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were lucky. If it was an ordinary person, they would have lost their life long ago. Therefore, Xiao Rojin still couldn't be dragged out of this matter. So this woman did it on purpose? Di Xiaofeng narrowed his eyes, his dark pupils rippling with a cold light. This woman was actually so vicious. Originally, his father suspected the Jun family. Now that the Xiao family's branch family members were here, he didn't know if the Xiao family was involved in this conspiracy. If the Xiao family was involved, then this matter would become even more troublesome. In the next second, Di Xiaofeng's gaze became firm again. No matter who dared to make a move on his brother, the Di family would definitely not let them go. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's gaze fall on her head, Xiao Rojin understood that if she didn't say anything, this day next year would be her death anniversary. Young Master Di, it was Bailey Hongzhuang who told us to leave at that time. Their death has nothing to do with me. Xiao Rojin hurriedly waved her hands, only hoping to clear her name. This matter, did your Xiao family make a move? Di Xiaofeng ignored Xiao Rojin's words and lowered his voice to ask. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Rojin's expression changed a bit. She also didn't know if this matter had anything to do with the Xiao family. If she revealed this situation, even if Di Xiaofeng let her go today, the main family probably wouldn't forgive her. At this moment, a loud sound came from not far away from her. She looked over and saw that there was an additional figure on the ground. At this moment, it was clearly lifeless and had turned into a corpse. This person was none other than Gong Tianfeng, who had escaped before. Looking at Gong Tianfeng's corpse, the cultivators present all sucked in a breath of cold air. It had only been a short period of time since Gong Tianfeng had escaped. Unexpectedly, she had already turned into a corpse. This showed how powerful this middle-aged man was. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Gong Tianfeng's corpse. From the shock on their faces, they could tell that the other party had killed her with a single blow. It was a complete suppression, so much so that Gong Tianfeng didn't even have time to fight back. Young master, it's settled. The man stood beside Di Xiaofeng again. Even though he was silent, no one dared to ignore him. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly and looked at Xiao Rojin again. Hurry up and answer me while I still have the patience. Otherwise, at this moment, Xiao Rojin couldn't care about anything else. She immediately told him everything she knew. I'm not targeting Di Beichen. It's just that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in the light attribute is rather outstanding and has some influence on our Xiao family. That's why I sent this news back to the family. As for the rest, I really don't know anything. Xiao Rojin's face was extremely pale. Although she was only a branch family disciple of the Xiao family, she was like a fish in water in Rong'an City. She didn't want to lose her life because of this matter. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng didn't suspect that Xiao Rojin was lying. In fact, the Xiao family's true decision wasn't something a branch family disciple like Xiao Rojin could know. Chapter 45-54. Since you don't know anything, there's no use for you to live. Emperor Xiaofeng's voice was cold. After saying this, he didn't even bother to look at Xiao Rojin. Originally, he despised Xiao Rojin's character very much, but he wasn't a bloodthirsty person. Since she had already been punished, it was fine. Moreover, since this person had a grudge with Situ and the others, he believed that Situ and the others would settle it themselves. With his appearance, neither the Radiant Sacred Assembly nor the Raging Flames sect would interfere in this matter. However, when he found out that Xiao Rojin was actually involved in the death of his younger brother and sister-in-law, Xiao Rojin was destined to be a dead person. Regardless of whether this matter was done by the Xiao family or not, since this woman was hostile to Beichen and the others and didn't save them at the critical moment, he definitely couldn't forgive her. The first elder on the side had already shown his killing intent when he heard of Xiao Rojin's actions. A mere branch family disciple dared to make a move on their young master. She was simply courting death. After hearing Emperor Xiaofeng's words, the first elder didn't hesitate to make a move and directly slapped the top of Xiao Rojin's head. Xiao Rojin clearly understood that danger was approaching. She wanted to escape immediately, but just as she was about to escape, an aura locked onto her, causing her to be unable to move at all. Immediately after, she felt a sharp pain. Her origin energy began to dissipate, and her vitality began to dissipate. Before she died, her eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others. She never thought that she would die in the hands of these cultivators from the lower world that she had never put in her eyes. Seeing Xiao Rojin die in front of him like this, Manager Sun's heart was filled with shock, but he didn't dare to say anything. The Di family was a huge family, not to mention Xiao Rojin. Even if Emperor Xiaofeng wanted to destroy the entire Raging Flame sect, what could they say? Right now, he only hoped that Emperor Xiaofeng wouldn't implicate the Raging Flame sect because of this matter. Otherwise, it would really be over. At this moment, Zhuo Hongyan also had the same thought. He never thought that the two young people from back then would have such a terrifying background. Although he couldn't understand why Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a powerful background, they still pretended to be cultivators from the lower realm. But now, it seemed that Di Beichen had some conflict with his family and left home. This kind of situation was not uncommon. Fortunately, he didn't treat Bailey Hongzhuang back then. This Di Xiaofeng didn't seem to be an unreasonable person. Manager Li looked at the unforeseen event in front of him and secretly exclaimed in his heart, none of them could afford to offend such a person. Fortunately, this matter had nothing to do with the Azure Dragon School. If they could use this matter to suppress the Raging Flame School, they would be more than happy to see it. Who was the person in charge of this matter in your Raging Flames school? Di Xiaofeng said coldly, even though he knew that Di Beichen's death was due to the pursuit of other forces. The Raging Flame Gate was also responsible. Since he came to Rongan City this time, he naturally had to understand the situation here. Chapter 45-55. When everyone saw Manager Sun hurriedly push all the blame to Manager Wu, they felt some disdain in their hearts. Manager Sun was very arrogant when he was flaunting his power. Now that he had admitted defeat, he completely pushed all the blame away. From this one could see his character. However, at this moment, Manager Sun couldn't care less about what others thought of him. Just now, he Gong Tianfeng and Xiao Rojin were standing on the same line. Now that Gong Tianfeng and Xiao Rojin had fallen, his greatest hope was to save his own life. Other than that, nothing else was important. Young Master D, you just have to ask Manager Wu. He knows everything very well. Manager Sun smiled embarrassedly. At this moment, Wan Yanhan couldn't help but stand up and say, Young Master D, Manager Wu has always taken good care of Beichen and Beichen. Manager Wu is also very sorry for their deaths. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng glanced at Wan Yanhan and then nodded. First Elder, go with Manager Sun to the Raging Flames sect and ask about the situation. I have some things to tell my friends. Yes, young master. In the next moment, the first elder took a step forward and lifted Manager Sun up like a chick. His figure quickly flew in the direction of the Raging Flames sect. Seeing this, Zhuo Hongyan cupped his hands and said, Young Master D, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. You may leave. At the same time, Manager Li didn't stay any longer. Clearly, there was nothing else for him to do here. Di Xiaofeng waved his hand and turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen behind him. Situi Xuan, I didn't expect to meet you as soon as I came to Rongan City. What a coincidence. When facing Di Beichen and the others, the coldness on Di Xiaofeng's face disappeared, and he became more approachable. Xiaofeng, thank you for helping us out just now, Di Beichen said. Di Xiaofeng smiled faintly. Situ, you're too polite. Even if I didn't step in, you would have found a way to resolve the situation. As the eldest young master of the Di clan, his judgment was naturally not simple. Earlier, he had already noticed that Di Beichen already had the intention to kill him. If he hadn't shown up, Di Beichen would have made his move. After all, Xiao Rojin was definitely no match for Di Beichen. It would be neat to kill her directly. In the next instant, Di Xiaofeng's gaze suddenly turned gloomy. Moreover, they bullied my younger brother and sister-in-law. I absolutely can't tolerate them. Thinking that Beichen had really fallen, Di Xiaofeng's mood was very gloomy. If possible, he wished he could meet his own younger brother. For so many years, he had been looking forward to reuniting with his younger brother. This was also the hope of their entire family. Who would have thought that they would not be able to reconcile in the end? Everyone naturally noticed Di Xiaofeng's sad and gloomy mood, and they all fell silent. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly sized up Di Xiaofeng. Ever since the previous incident, both she and Beichen had become very vigilant. They had to get to the bottom of this matter. She felt that Di Xiaofeng's sadness at this moment did not seem to be faked. On the contrary, he seemed to be really sad about Beichen's death. Moreover, in her impression, Di Xiaofeng was not such a sinister person. Even so, they still had to be cautious when dealing with this matter. Chapter 45-56. Young Master Wan Yan, you're my brother and sister-in-law's senior brother. I wonder if you can tell me more about them? Di Xiaofeng calmed himself down and looked at Wan Yanhan. Although the news of Di Beichen's death was basically set in stone, he still wanted to know more about his brother. Wan Yanhan nodded. No problem. There's a restaurant up ahead. Why don't we go there and talk? It's not convenient to talk on the street, Yi Haomiao suggested. After the unforeseen event earlier, they had already become the center of everyone's discussion. Now that they were standing here, there were many cultivators around them who had stopped to watch them. Their words could easily be overheard by others. Okay. In a private room in the restaurant, Di Beichen and the others sat down together. Di Xiaofeng clearly didn't care about the joy of reuniting with Di Beichen and the others. His mind was filled with his brother and sister-in-law's situation. So my brother and sister-in-law are both heaven-sent geniuses. After hearing Wang Yanhan's words, Di Xiaofeng also understood. He couldn't help but feel proud. It turned out that his brother and sister-in-law were such geniuses. Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but nod. They're really rare geniuses. If it wasn't for their help, Wang Yanhan and I would have been dead. Then the people who chased after them, did you see clearly? Di Xiaofeng asked. No matter what, I must avenge my brother and sister-in-law. At that time, we saw 3 black-clothed men. Their strength was very strong. In just a face-to-face effort, they had already disappeared in front of our eyes. Moreover, they were all masked. We couldn't catch up to them at all. Wang Yanhan sighed and shook his head. He also hoped to help Di Beichen and Yi Haomiao find the people who chased after them. Unfortunately, they were helpless against such opponents. Oh right, you said that you didn't see my brother's body. Only a skeleton army appeared in front of us, right? Di Xiaofeng keenly grasped the information in Yi Haomiao's words. His heart tightened as he looked at Yi Haomiao. Is that so? Yi Haomiao nodded. Yes. If that's the case, then maybe my brother and the others are still alive. Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up again. Even though the possibility was small, it was still a possibility. Beichen and Hong Zhuang are both geniuses. Back then, Beichen went to the lower realm. Over the years, many people believed that he had fallen. However, not only is he alive and well, he even came to the upper realm. Maybe there will be a miracle this time. I always feel that the heavens take pity on us. One day, we will be reunited. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's hopeful look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, Xiaofeng, are you really looking forward to your brother's return? Of course. I only have one younger brother. All these years, the whole family has been hoping that he can come back soon. When my younger brother went missing, my mother cried every day. My father felt even more guilty and has been searching for him for the past 20 years. In fact, I haven't seen my father much over the years, but I understand him. All these years I've been out a lot. Actually, I've been trying my luck. Maybe I'll be able to see him one day. Chapter 45-57. That's right, Yi Xian. I have another reason for coming to Rong'an City. I want to invite you to my family. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help looking at Bailey Hongzhuang as he spoke. Your medical skills are very outstanding. I hope you can help me with something. No matter what the reward is, I'll do my best. Xiaofeng, you don't need to be so polite. Since you need help, I'll go to the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up. They had originally planned to go to the Di family. She also wanted to know what Beichen's family was like. Xiaofeng, you want Yi Xian to go to your family to treat who? Di Beichen couldn't help but ask. It's my mother. Di Xiaofeng sighed. These years, because of my brother's disappearance, my mother has been depressed and crying all day. Her body is already very bad. A few days ago, my mother found out that my brother was still alive, and her body got better. However, when she found out that my brother had died, she suffered an even bigger blow, and her body is getting worse and worse. Now she has less and less energy. As long as she thinks of Beichen, her face will be covered in tears. If this continues, I'm afraid she won't be able to hold on for much longer. I know Yi Xian has a way to treat this kind of patient, so I wanted to ask you to treat my mother. This heart knot has been there for many years, and it won't be easy to treat it. However, we've already lost Beichen. We can't lose her too. Di Xiaofeng's eyes reddened. Everyone thought that he was born in such a glorious family, but they couldn't even have the most basic reunion. When he heard that Di Xiaofeng's mother couldn't hold on for much longer, Di Beichen's hand holding the teacup couldn't help but tremble. He didn't even notice the hot tea splashing onto his hand. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart couldn't help but tremble. She didn't expect the Di family to be in such a situation. Through Di Xiaofeng's description, she could already imagine the pain and sadness Di Beichen's mother had been in these years. Her son had led a wandering life for so many years, and she could no longer express how much she missed him. Originally, she was already unable to bear the burden of such longing and sadness. Later, she experienced such a blow from heaven to hell. so it was normal for her to become like this. Not to mention her. Even if it was anyone else, they would not be able to withstand such a blow. Thinking back to how they had speculated about Beichen's background, it turned out that his parents loved him so much. Even if they didn't go to the D family, they already knew everything. There was no need to mention Beichen's mother, and his father had been searching for him all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that Beichen would have died a long time ago if they hadn't found a doctor who could cure his cursed body. The Supreme D clan was very clear about this situation. But during these years, they had been persisting in their search, not willing to give up. It was precisely because of the love in their hearts. As for Di Xiaofeng, she no longer doubted him. She noticed that when Di Xiaofeng said that he had never blamed his parents, his tone was very calm and full of understanding. In fact, Di Beichen had been wandering outside all these years. Everyone only felt that he had suffered a lot of grievances. But in fact, for more than 20 years, the people of the Di family had obviously put all their attention on Di Beichen. Chapter 45-58. Yixuan, I beg you, you must find a way to save my mother. Di Xiaofeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with red eyes. Now Bailey Hongzhuang was the only hope he could think of. Di Yujue had already invited all the miracle doctors he could, but there was no effect. If Lan Yixuan couldn't cure his mother, then there was really no hope. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Xiaofeng, don't worry. I will do my best. In fact, as soon as she knew that the patient was Di Beichen's mother, Bailey Hongzhuang would do her best to treat her. That was her mother-in-law. However, she believed that as long as Di Beichen went back, she wouldn't need to do anything and his mother would recover. After all, the heart of the heart had to be cured. Lin Yunqing had been looking forward to Di Beichen's return for so many years. As long as Di Beichen went back, her illness would be mostly cured. Oh right, Brother Wanyan is my brother and sister-in-law's senior brother. He is also your senior brother. So, you know my brother and sister-in-law too? Di Xiaofeng looked at Di Beichen and Lan Yixuan in surprise. He didn't expect that the two friends he made outside were his brother's senior brother and sister. Yes, we are all from Penglai Palace. Di Beichen smiled faintly, just as they were talking, when Xiren and the others also rushed over. Just as they opened the door of the private room, when Xiren's impatient voice came in. I heard that you guys had a conflict with Xiao Rojin outside. Along the way, they heard that everyone was talking about this. Even if they didn't see it with their own eyes, they almost understood the whole process. It wasn't until they came in that when Xiren realized that Di Xiaofeng was also here, he immediately cupped his hands to Di Xiaofeng. Young Master Di is also here. Di Xiaofeng smiled and nodded. We meet again. Xiren originally had a stomach full of questions, but after seeing Di Xiaofeng, he swallowed them back down. He had heard that Di Xiaofeng was from the D clan. Didn't they originally plan to go to the D clan? Most importantly, what was the relationship between Di Xiaofeng and Beichen? Di Xiaofeng naturally noticed Xiren's hesitant look, but he didn't care. After all, he had only interacted with Xiren and the others for a short period of time. Naturally, it was impossible for him to tell them everything. Young master, I've already inquired about the matter. The great elder quickly returned, but he didn't continue speaking either. Seeing this, Di Beichen stood up and said, Xiaofeng, since you still have things to do, then we'll go back first. You can directly go to the Azure Dragon Gate and let us know when we're leaving. All right. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, Di Xiaofeng looked at the great elder. Great elder, what's the situation? Hearing Di Xiaofeng's question, the great elder didn't immediately answer. Instead, he looked in the direction Di Beichen and the others left and said, Young master, your two friends have disguised themselves. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. Disguise? Chapter 45-59. Although I don't know how young master met them, but since they have never treated young master with their true faces, I think it's best to be careful when making friends with them. The great elder's eyes flashed with wisdom and contemplation. Although he had a good impression of Di Beichen, since they were being so secretive, there must be something they couldn't tell others. Di Xiaofeng also didn't expect such a situation. Since Di Beichen saved him, he had always regarded these two as friends that he could make deep friends with. If it wasn't for the Great Elder's reminder, he would never have known that Di Beichen had disguised themselves. Even so, he still felt that Di Beichen didn't mean to deceive him, because as early as the first time they met, the two of them had already disguised themselves. Moreover, the two of them had been in disguise ever since they came to Rong'an City. It could be seen that this disguise wasn't targeted at him. Previously, he had heard that they went to Shuiyun City because they were being chased. Presumably, this disguise was also to hide from the people who were chasing them. Great Elder, I believe that they are sincere to me, Di Xiaofeng slowly said. No matter what reason Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng had disguised themselves, from the day he pretended to be drunk, he knew that the two of them were sincere to him. Seeing that Di Xiaofeng had already confirmed this point, the Great Elder helplessly shook his head, but didn't say anything. He understood that the young master had his own thoughts, and it was useless for him to say anything more. However, he still felt that there was something wrong with people who couldn't be sincere. Great Elder, let's not talk about this for now. Tell me in detail what you learned from the Raging Flames sect. Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked towards the Azure Dragon sect. Xiren couldn't help but ask, what's going on? Is Di Xiaofeng really from the Di family? Then what's the relationship between you two? He was really confused now. He just went to the guild and didn't expect so many things to happen. Di Xiaofeng is Beichen's biological brother. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Di Beichen had been silent the whole time. This sudden situation clearly needed some time to digest. They had already learned from Ao Lingxiao that Beichen had an older brother, but they didn't expect this older brother to be Di Xiaofeng. Life was really full of coincidences. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, when Zirant's voice was sluggish, this situation was really unexpected. Then what do you plan? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichen and then said, Beichen's mother was too sad when she heard that he had died. Now she is seriously ill, so we plan to go to the Di family first. No matter what, we cannot let anything happen to his mother. That's true. Xiren nodded. This is also good. If we take this opportunity to go to the Di family, Beichen can safely return to the Di family. The reason why they didn't go to the Di family was because they were worried that they might encounter an accident on the way. Now that Di Xiaofeng was leading the way, their journey would be much smoother. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything. She just gave him a look. Xiren immediately understood. This situation still needed Di Beichen to make the decision. In fact, this kind of thing about one's background, no matter who it was, would need some time to think about it. Chapter 45-60. These were all his direct relatives. It was a pity that he had never interacted with them before. Thinking about it, no matter who it was, they wouldn't know what to do in such a situation. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't worried at all, because she had experienced this before. Thinking back to when she found out about her background, her feelings were very complicated. But the moment she saw her relatives, all the psychological burden instantly disappeared. The feeling of blood being thicker than water was innate. When Xiren and the others also understood that Di Beichen needed some time to think about things, immediately, everyone returned to their own residences. Wanyan Han, Wanyan Ling, and Yi Haomiao didn't return to the Raging Flame sect. Instead, they came to the Azure Dragon sect with them. Previously, they had already offended Manager Sunday. Although Manager Wu was the one in charge of their affairs, there were many ways to deal with them after offending a manager in the sect. Although Di Xiaofeng was here now and Manager Sun didn't dare to do anything to them, once Di Xiaofeng left, their situation would be worse. Luckily, Manager Li of the Azure Dragon sect had also extended an olive branch to them. If they could stay in the Azure Dragon sect, it would be good news for them. However, they were only temporarily staying in Xiren's residence. As for how to deal with all this, they hadn't thought about it yet. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Di Beichen before saying, Beichen, you also plan to make a trip to the Di family, right? Di Beichen nodded slightly. This time he definitely had to go back. His mother was seriously ill because of him. If he didn't go back, how could he be at ease? As long as you go back, your mother will know that you're still alive. Her illness will be cured without any treatment. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle and comforting. Previously, she had also noticed Di Beichen's reaction when he heard that Lin Yunqing was seriously ill. Actually, these relatives occupied an extremely important position in Di Beichen's heart. However, as long as we go to the Di clan, I'm sure your father will recognize you immediately. Staring at Di Beichen with her bright black eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that although her disguise technique was not bad, at the level of cultivation of Di Beichen's father, recognizing a person no longer depended on their appearance, but on their aura. It was possible to disguise one's appearance, but it was very difficult to hide one's aura. Thus, their return this time around was to reveal their identities. Di Beichen nodded. I understand. If I'm not wrong, the Great Elder has already seen through our disguises. Di Beichen's eyes were bright and wise. He could feel that the Elder was looking at them with a trace of doubt. Moreover, the Elder's gaze was fixed on him and Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. So, Xiaofeng should already know. For a moment, the two of them fell into silence. If Di Xiaofeng knew that they had been using disguises to face him, who knew what he would think? After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang said, Do you think we should talk about it after we return to the Di family, or now? If it wasn't for the assassination earlier, they would have already told him frankly. But now, the decision was in Di Beichen's hands. Chapter 4561. Let me think about it. Di Beichen said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and didn't disturb Di Beichen anymore. Actually, it was safer to talk after returning to the Di family, but she was worried that Di Xiaofeng would be suspicious because they didn't trust him enough. But if she said it now, once Di Xiaofeng had second thoughts, they would be in danger again. Early the next morning, Di Xiaofeng came to the Azure Dragon sect. Situ Yixuan, can you guys come back to the family with me today? Di Xiaofeng's face was somewhat helpless. He already understood the situation from the Raging Flames sect, but he didn't have a specific goal. The most important thing now was his mother's illness, so he couldn't delay. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded without hesitation. No problem. Thank you so much. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with gratitude. Although he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Situ Yixuan had been hiding their true identities, he believed that their friendship was real. Xiaofeng, this time, when I go to the Di clan, can I bring Ziran and the others with me? Di Beichen slowly asked. He was very clear that once he went to the Di family, his identity wouldn't be hidden anymore. Ziran and the others came to the upper realm because of him. If he went to the Di family, he naturally couldn't let Ziran and the others continue to stay here. They already had a tacit understanding on this point. However, after Di Xiaofeng and Great Elder heard Di Beichen's request, their expressions became very strange. They only asked Bailey Hongzhuang to treat Lin Yunqing. It was understandable that Di Beichen would go with them, but it was strange that so many people were going together. Young Master Situ, we're only going to treat her this time. This Great Elder only said half of his words, but everyone understood what he meant. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. It was indeed difficult for him to accept such a request without knowing anything about it. However, just as Di Beichen was about to explain, Di Xiaofeng suddenly waved his hand and said, Since Sita brought it up, then let's do it. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised. They knew the specific situation, so they weren't surprised by Di Beichen's suggestion. Di Xiaofeng didn't know anything, but he agreed just like that? Did he really trust them that much? Let's go. Di Xiaofeng smiled. Thank you. Di Beichen's deep eyes flashed with a complicated and bright light, but there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Just as everyone was preparing to set off together, Wang Yanhan suddenly spoke up. Situ, Yixuan, I have some words I want to say to you all. Hearing that, Di Beichen and the others looked at Wang Yanhan in surprise, not knowing what he wanted to say at this time. Then you all go ahead, I'll wait for you all. Di Xiaofeng said tactfully. After Di Xiaofeng and Great Elder left, Wan Yinhan said, Di Beichen, you all are going to the Di family, we won't go. Why? Di Beichen frowned. Ever since they came to the upper realm, Wan Yinhan had always taken care of them. After such a long time together, he already treated Wan Yinhan as a good brother. Chapter 4562. Go ahead. I believe that we will meet again in the future. Wan Yinhan had a warm and sunny smile on his face as he wished Di Beichen well. When he found out that Di Beichen was the young master of the Di family, he knew that they were no longer in the same world. If they followed Di Beichen to the Di family, they would not be mistreated. However, he hoped to create his own world through his own efforts. Only in this way, when they met Di Beichen and the others in the future, they could still maintain their current relationship. He knew that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were sincere to them. However, they were different from Wen Xiren and the others. Wen Xiren and the others had a long relationship with Di Beichen. They naturally could not compare. Di Beichen looked deeply at Wan Yinhan. He understood Wan Yinhan's thoughts. After a moment of silence he said, Okay, eldest senior brother, there will definitely be a day when we meet again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wan Yinhan with reluctance in her eyes. Although she did not spend much time with Wan Yinhan, she really treated Wan Yinhan as a big brother. That's right. We will. Yi Haomiao and Wan Yinling also said, You must take care. You must take care too. When Di Xiaofeng saw that Wan Yinhan and the others did not come together, he was also surprised. However, he did not ask. Let's go. Then, everyone walked towards the teleportation array. A feeling of dislocation came, and when they opened their eyes again, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were already in a strange city. This Ganyang city is only a transit station. It will take some time to reach my Di family. Di Xiaofeng explained slowly. Flying is prohibited in Ganyang city. We will fly to my family after leaving Ganyang city. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were confused. With their current strength, it was indeed possible for them to fly. But if they were to fly for a long time, they would not be able to withstand it. Could it be that this Ganyang city was already very close to the Di clan? However, when they arrived outside the city, they understood. This was because Di Xiaofeng and First Elder had taken out 2 flying carriages. This is a flying magic artifact. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 2 flying chariots in front of her in surprise. She had heard of the upper realm's flying chariots before. These flying chariots were refined by master refiners, but she had never seen one before. In Rongan City, she had only interacted with ordinary cultivators in the sect. She did not have such a background at all. Di Xiaofeng nodded. That's right, my flying magic artifact doesn't have a lot of space because I'm usually alone. My family has a large flying magic artifact, but mine is just a simple one. Now that we're all going to fly there together, we need 2. When Xiren and the rest were pleasantly surprised when they saw the flying instrument. They had only heard of such a treasure before, so they were really curious about its effects. Instantly, the entire group split into 2 and sat in the 2 flying chariots. After everyone sat in, they felt the chariot shake. Then they flew into the sky. Sitting in the flying chariot, it felt very stable, and the flying speed was extremely fast. Chapter 4563. Sitting on the flying car, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the layout of the flying car. Although Di Xiaofeng's flying car wasn't big, the layout was very luxurious. It wasn't simple at a glance. She had come into contact with flying magic tools before, but she wasn't a forger, so she didn't know much about it. However, she still had basic eyesight. It was clear that Di Xiaofeng's flying magic tool wasn't low-grade. For a large family like the Di family, the young master's things naturally wouldn't be bad. Di Xiaofeng sat at the front of the flying car. After setting the direction, he turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. My flying magic tool is usually used by me alone, so I chose a small one. Actually, another reason is that although this flying magic tool is small, it's fast. After all, the larger the size, the greater the resistance. Head Elder often takes the juniors out to do things, so his flying magic tool is bigger. Di Xiaofeng explained with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also saw the head elder's flying magic tool. It was indeed much bigger than Di Xiaofeng's. At this moment, there were only 3 people sitting on Di Xiaofeng's flying magic tool. Xiren and the others were with the head elder. So it's like that. Di Beichen smiled faintly. With this kind of flying magic tool, traveling is indeed much more convenient. Although this flying magic tool wasn't as fast as a teleportation formation, not every place had a teleportation formation, so the flying magic tool was undoubtedly useful. If they had a flying magic tool, they wouldn't have to spend so much effort to travel. Di Xiaofeng looked at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. His eyes flashed with a complicated light. He wanted to say something, but he stopped. After a while Di Xiaofeng said, Situi Xuan, I don't have many friends, but I really think of you as good friends. As soon as the words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed a bit. It seemed that their guess was right. Di Xiaofeng already knew about their disguise. I know you've disguised yourselves. No matter what the reason is, I still hope that we can treat each other with sincerity. Di Xiaofeng's dark eyes were filled with sincerity. If it was just him, he wouldn't think too deeply about it. But Bailey Hongzhuang was going to treat his mother, so he had to eliminate all possibilities. Bailey Hongzhuang did not reply. Instead, she looked at Di Beichen. Until now, she still did not know what decision Di Beichen had made. However, now that Di Xiaofeng had already spoken to this point, it was naturally impossible for him not to give a reason. Actually, you deliberately let us sit with you, Di Beichen said slowly. He had already discovered this long ago. Di Xiaofeng's flying carriage was indeed small, but the first elder's flying carriage was very big. They could ride the first elder's flying carriage together, but Di Xiaofeng still wanted to ride separately. At that time, he had already guessed the reason. That's right. Di Xiaofeng didn't deny it. I'm very sorry. No. Di Beichen waved his hand. Actually, we were hiding something from you. Even if you didn't say it, I was going to tell you the truth. He wasn't stupid. In fact, he saw through these things very clearly. Di Xiaofeng cared about their friendship, but the first elder definitely didn't believe them. Chapter 45-64. Seeing that Di Beichen was willing to be honest with him, Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. It seemed that his judgment was right. Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng treated him with sincerity. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked a question. Xiaofeng, do you hope that your brother will never go back? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was startled. He frowned and his face turned cold. Why? I've always wanted my brother to go back as soon as possible. If he goes back, won't you have another competitor? Bailey Hongzhuang looked straight into Di Xiaofeng's eyes. It wasn't that she was narrow-minded. In fact, this kind of thing was common in large families. It was rare to see 2 brothers who had a good relationship and helped each other. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. I understand what you're saying, but this kind of thing won't happen in my Di family. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's confident look, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly glanced at Di Beichen and didn't say anything else. Di Beichen's lips gradually curved into a smile. Back then, because we were being chased, we were worried that we would encounter enemies again. So we disguised ourselves. When we first met you, we didn't know that you were from the Di family. We only thought that you were an ordinary cultivator. We were worried that you would be implicated by us. So we didn't face you with our real faces. Di Xiaofeng's expression softened. In fact, he had already guessed this. Even if the great elder didn't agree with his point of view, he had always believed that his judgment wouldn't be wrong. Now it seemed that he was right. Back then you were being chased in Rong'an City? Di Xiaofeng frowned. What a coincidence. My brother and sister-in-law were also being chased in Rong'an City. However, you're all cultivators from the lower realm. Why were you being chased? Di Xiaofeng was a bit confused. Logically speaking, cultivators from the lower realm shouldn't be a threat to cultivators from the upper realm. Normally, this kind of situation wouldn't happen. However, when he said this, Di Xiaofeng's expression suddenly changed. His gaze was fixed on Di Beichen and Li Wuyo. This situation seemed to be too much of a coincidence. His younger brother and sister-in-law were being hunted down. Situ and Yixian were also being hunted down. Wanyan Han was his younger brother and sister-in-law's senior martial brother. Similarly, he was the senior martial brother of Situ and Situ. How could there be so many coincidences in this world? Wait! Di Xiaofeng stretched out his hand. I need a strand. I have an impossible idea. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. Both of them stopped talking. It seemed that Di Xiaofeng had understood. After a long while, Di Xiaofeng suddenly raised his head and looked at Di Beichen in disbelief. Di Beichen nodded quietly. You guessed right. You're Di Beichen. Di Xiaofeng's eyes widened. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes quietly turned red. Situcheng Di Beichen. He remembered his father saying that the person who was itching to kill Di Beichen was called Situ Yan. All this time, he had never thought in this direction. However, now that everything was connected, he suddenly understood. Di Beichen smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. It's me. Di Xiaofeng's voice trembled and choked. You're still alive. Chapter 45-65. Looking at the handsome face in front of him, Di Xiaofeng didn't feel unfamiliar at all. Because he had seen this face in the portrait before. That's right, it's him. He's my brother. That's great. You're still alive. Di Xiaofeng was so excited that he couldn't control himself. His eyes were a little wet as he opened his arms to Di Beichen. Di Beichen's smile gradually widened as the two brothers hugged each other. Good boy. Di Xiaofeng patted Di Beichen's back. I knew you would survive. You don't know how much we've been waiting for you to come back. It's a good thing you're fine. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were red as he held back his tears. For so many years, all of them had been waiting for Di Beichen to come back. He didn't expect that he would see him before. No wonder when he first saw Di Beichen, he felt like they were old friends at first sight. At this moment he understood everything. Di Beichen's smile gradually widened. He didn't say anything. At this moment nothing needed to be said. Bailey Hongzhuang watched the process of the two brothers' reunion, and her heart was filled with joy. Perhaps their reunion wasn't earth-shattering, but men weren't good at expressing their emotions. She could feel that the two of them were extremely excited at this moment. Brothers who had been separated for more than 20 years finally met. They were unfamiliar yet familiar, but there was no barrier between them. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also removed her disguise. Di Beichen's judgment was right. Di Xiaofeng was indeed trustworthy, and she was really happy for Beichen. Because in such a huge family, having such a brotherly relationship was very precious. After a moment, Di Xiaofeng let go of Di Beichen and quietly wiped the corners of his eyes. The smile on his face became even brighter. Beichen, I really didn't expect you to be Beichen. Even now Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but sigh. This sudden change made him feel as if he had fallen into a dream. For a moment, he didn't even dare to believe that all of this was real. He was even afraid that this was just a dream. I didn't expect you to be my big brother. Di Beichen chuckled. When I first found out that you were Wanyan Han's junior brothers and sisters, I felt that it was very strange. However, I couldn't figure out what it was strange about. Until now, I finally understand. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. In fact, ever since he went to Rong'an City, he had a strange feeling lingering in his heart. Now he finally understood. When we found out that you are the young master of the Supreme Di clan, we were also extremely shocked. No wonder you two were so close to each other. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. When Beichen first met Uncle, he also hit it off very well. Actually, I should have guessed it back when I was in Watercloud City. Only then did Di Xiaofeng look at Bailey Hongzhuang. With one look he couldn't help but be stunned. Before, Bailey Hongzhuang could only be said to be a delicate and pretty girl. But now Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely a stunning woman. It was a kind of breathtaking beauty. He admitted that he had never seen such a beautiful girl in his life. All the beautiful adjectives in the world seemed to be insufficient to add to her body. Such a beauty should only exist in the heavens. Big brother. Seeing Di Xiaofeng staring at his wife in a daze, Di Beichen couldn't help but call out. Chapter 45-66. Second brother. I've long heard that sister-in-law is a beauty. Seeing you today is simply shocking. Di Xiaofeng laughed heartily. My second brother is really lucky, haha. It's mainly because I have good taste. Di Beichen admitted bluntly. Bailey Hongzhuang listened to the two's praise, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. You're really not polite. Di Xiaofeng laughed and scolded. Although this is also the truth. The two clearly just recognized each other, but at this moment, they were very natural with each other, as if they had never been separated all these years. I finally understand why you want everyone to follow you back to the family. It turns out that you've already made up your mind. As he spoke, Di Xiaofeng suddenly frowned. Oh right, since you've already come to the upper realm, why didn't you return to the family? We originally planned to go back, but although the Di family's reputation is resounding, most people don't even know where it is. Moreover, after we were suddenly attacked, we also guessed a few possibilities, so we planned to understand the situation clearly before taking action. However, it just so happened that you came to find us, so we naturally went back on the way. The handsome and perfect face rippled with an evil smile. This time, they had indeed taken a ride. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng bringing them back, they were afraid that they would have to rely on their own 2 feet to hurry back, which would take a long time. This is because the heavens can't bear to see you wandering outside, so they sent me to Rome and city to bring you back as soon as possible. Ever since he found out that Di Beichen was his younger brother, the smile on Di Xiaofeng's face never disappeared. In the past, he had also fantasized about his younger brother's appearance. Now that he looked at Di Beichen in front of him, he was really satisfied. This was even more satisfying than he had imagined. Actually, this is also because father has always been unwilling to give up. We received news that you had already fallen, but father was always unwilling to believe it. Originally, he insisted on going to Rong'an City to take a look, but because I said that I wanted to find Yi Xian to treat mother's injuries, so I went instead. Mother's situation is quite bad now, so she can't go without someone to accompany her. Di Xiaofeng's eyes quietly flashed with a trace of sadness, but he quickly recovered. Now that Beichen is back, mother will definitely recover. Di Beichen nodded slightly, his eyes filled with anticipation. He also hoped that Lin Yunqing's condition would get better soon. He finally came back, and he hoped that his family could be reunited. Brother Xiaofeng, can you tell me more about the Di family? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Xiaofeng curiously. Until now, they didn't know much about the Di family. Now that Di Xiaofeng was here, he naturally wanted to know more. No problem. Di Xiaofeng chuckled. You've already met father. As for mother, she's a famous beauty. Sister-in-law, just look at me and second brother. Of course, father's looks aren't bad either. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Indeed, when she first saw Di Yujue, he was also a first-class handsome man. Mother is the young miss of the Lin family. The Lin family is also a big family. Back then, father and mother's union was a strong union. But mother was a famous beauty and had many pursuers. Father was also very capable, so he captured mother's heart. Chapter 4567. I heard that father and mother were a pair that everyone envied. They were very loving, but I rarely saw them together. Ever since Beichen disappeared, mother has been sad and blamed father. Father blamed himself, and has been searching for Beichen's whereabouts all these years. However, I can still see that they are very much in love, because they are always worried about each other. Di Xiaofeng's voice was full of emotion. If Beichen hadn't been wandering outside, they would have been very happy all these years. Di Beichen fell silent after hearing all this. He already knew about this situation before. When he chatted with Di Yujue, he knew that Di Yujue loved his wife very much. It was just that he was unwilling to forgive him, because of one thing. However, at that time, he didn't know that it was all because of him. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was slightly touched. She believed that after hearing all this, Di Beichen would no longer have any dissatisfaction with the family. It wasn't that the Supreme Di clan had given up on him. Rather, it was because he was plotted against by his enemies. All these years, the Supreme Di clan had always placed Beichen's safety in their hearts. No one had ever chosen to give him up. Until this time, Everyone was sure that Beichen was no longer around. However, whether it was Di Yujue or Di Xiaofeng, they didn't give up and insisted on confirming. That year, father went out and you disappeared. All these years, grandfather was unwilling to forgive father. Originally, grandfather was prepared to hand over the position of family head to father 20 years ago. Because of this, grandfather has been the family head all these years. Not only that, in fact, father would be scolded by grandfather every time he came back. Speaking of this, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but laugh. In the past, because they were worried about Beichen's safety, they weren't in the mood to joke. However, now that he knew that Beichen was doing well, he was completely relieved. At this moment, when he recalled the way his father had been scolded all these years, he really felt that it was very funny. One must know that in the eyes of outsiders, Di Yujue was an awe-inspiring figure. But in the family, he was actually in such a situation. If word got out, perhaps no one would be willing to believe it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also smiled. From Di Xiaofeng's description, they could already imagine what kind of personality his grandfather had. With Di Yujue's status, perhaps only the old man of the Di family dared to scold him like this. Just a few days ago, grandfather passed the position of patriarch to father. Because grandfather felt that this matter was all his fault, grandfather had been in seclusion for this period of time. I think he took all the responsibility on himself. Di Xiaofeng slowly told Di Beichen about Di Kaiyuan. After listening to all of this, Di Beichen's expression changed slightly. If it was said that he was very unfamiliar with the Di family before and didn't feel anything, but now after hearing all of this, he had an indescribable sense of belonging to the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang also didn't expect that the Di family would have such a misunderstanding. In the end, this matter couldn't be blamed on the old man of the Di family. It was just that Di Kaiyuan had gone into a dead end and taken the wrong path. Fortunately, Beichen is fine. I believe that after Beichen goes back, everyone will be able to untie the knot in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Chapter 4568. Now all of this would disappear with Di Beichen's return. Thinking of this, she felt very happy. Right now, I can't wait to return to the family and tell them this good news. Di Xiaofeng's smile was extremely bright. I really want to see their happy faces when the time comes. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were happy here, when Xiren and the others were not used to being with the head elder. However, the head elder clearly didn't want to talk to them. He kept silent the whole way, so they just closed their eyes and cultivated. In fact, the head elder's mood was very complicated. He originally wanted everyone to take the same flying car, but the young master insisted on taking the same car with them. Although he didn't want to, he couldn't dissuade the young master, and could only agree. He always felt that Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng were hiding something. Plus, the young master was ambushed before, so he couldn't help but worry. Fortunately, according to his judgment, the two weren't as strong as the young master. Otherwise, no matter what, he wouldn't let the young master do this. It would take a few days to fly from here to the Di family. He was really worried that something would happen midway. While thinking, the head elder's gaze couldn't help but sweep over Xiren and the others. With these hostages in his hands, he believed that there wouldn't be any problems. Xiren and the others didn't know that the head elder had so many thoughts flashing through his mind. They also didn't know that they were hostages in the head elder's eyes. They only thought that the head elder didn't have any interest in them. Di Beichen, I can guarantee that as long as the news of your return spreads out, grandfather and grandmother will quickly rush over. Di Xiaofeng seemed to have suddenly thought of this, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Grandfather and grandmother? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. He had only heard of the Di family, but didn't know much about grandfather and grandmother. Mother is from the Lin family. Our grandfather is the head of the Lin family. The Lin family is also a cultivation family. Back then, father and mother's union was a strong union. Back then, her mother was the apple of her grandfather's eye. At that time, when her father became his son-in-law, her grandfather was very picky. It was only after he accepted her that things became better. Because my mother was the only daughter of my maternal grandfather, when my mother was pregnant, she asked her first son to inherit the Lin family, which was me. As for you, you are the true successor of the supreme D clan. When you were born, it was the happiest time for the whole family. Mother gave birth to 2 boys, and it just so happened that both of them had heirs. Not only that, you were found to have the cursed body. Actually, the cursed body has always been passed down in our D family. Once the cursed physique transforms into the heavenly mandate physique, your cultivation speed will increase greatly, and you will become a true genius. From then on, you will be the successor of the D clan. I just didn't expect something like that to happen. Di Xiaofeng looked helpless. If that hadn't happened, everything would have been great. After hearing all of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with shock. She didn't expect there to be such a story. No wonder Di Xiaofeng didn't mind Di Beichen's appearance at all. It turned out that he was already set as the successor of the Lin family. Chapter 4569. Actually, father is quite pitiful. Ever since he went missing, not only did grandfather scold father badly, grandfather also scolded father no less than grandfather. Because of this, grandfather wasn't willing to contact the D family these years. It's just that mother and I would often go to the Lin family. Di Xiaofeng sighed faintly. The 2 old men of the 2 families had bad tempers. Di Beichen was the apple of everyone's eye. With such a precious apple gone, one could imagine the situation. It seems like I can already imagine the scene when master returns to the D family. Xiao Bai, who was sitting on Di Beichen's shoulder, couldn't help but sigh. So my master is the big apple of the 2 families, ah. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Di Beichen's expression was a bit unnatural. It wasn't appropriate for a grown man like him to be called an apple, right? Then it's going to be lively. When we go back, we'll be able to meet everyone very quickly. Xiao He suddenly raised her eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang playfully. Master, it's time for the ugly daughter-in-law to meet her parents-in-law. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and her eyes were filled with threat. Ugly daughter-in-law? No, no, no. Xiao He hurriedly waved her hands. Beautiful daughter-in-law, beautiful daughter-in-law. Looking at the mischievous Xiao He and Xiao Bai, Di Xiaofeng chuckled. The family already knows about sister-in-law's matter. When father went to the lower realm, he went to the Tiangang sect. He learned a lot about your marriage and your experience together. Sister-in-law, we are very grateful for your family's care for Beichen all these years. Di Xiaofeng's expression was serious. He heard that Bailey Hongzhuang's family was very outstanding in the lower realm. Beichen was adopted by Bailey Hongzhuang's grandfather, since he was young, and later married his granddaughter to him. They would remember this kindness in their hearts. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang instantly understood. Originally, she was still worried about the situation at the D clan. After all, she was just a cultivator from the lower realm, and no one could be sure that she wouldn't be biased by her family background. Of course, she also believed in Di Beichen's feelings for her. After several days of traveling, the flying car finally came to a stop on a flat piece of land. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got off the flying car, the great elder, Wen Ziren, and the others quickly walked over. The first elder was originally worried about Di Xiaofeng's safety, but when he saw Di Beichen, he couldn't help but be stunned. His face was filled with astonishment. Isn't this the second young master? As the great elder of the D clan, he had seen Di Beichen's portrait before. This young man in front of him clearly looked exactly the same as the second young master. Ziren and the others also noticed that Di Beichen and Di Beichen had revealed their true faces. In their hearts, they already knew that Di Beichen had revealed everything. Di Xiaofeng looked at the great elder's incredulous expression and couldn't help but chuckle. That's right, he is Beichen. What? The great elder raised his voice. He was also someone who had experienced great storms, but wasn't this news too shocking? Didn't they go to pick up the great young master's friend? Why did they pick up the second young master? Although all of this made him feel incredulous, there was a feeling of extreme joy in his heart. The second young master really didn't die. Chapter 4570. Your second young master? The first elder stood in front of Bewitching, his face filled with unconcealable joy and excitement. Second young master, you're still alive. Bewitching noticed the first elder's excited look and understood that the first elder was also one of his close relatives. A smile appeared on his face. Yes, I'm back. That's great. The first elder excitedly wiped the corners of his eyes. All these years, we've all been waiting for you to come back. Now that you're finally back, that's great. Now everyone can finally be at ease. That's great. The first elder said, that's great 3 times in a row to express his joy. Let's go back quickly. I'm sure everyone will be very happy to see second young master. The first elder's face was full of smiles. At this moment, he had completely forgotten that he had doubted Bewitching and felt that they were a threat to first young master. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest behind saw this scene, and their smiles gradually widened. Even if they weren't Bewitching, they could feel Bewitching's happiness at this moment. How far are we from the D family residence? Shang Guanying looked at the large grassland and mountain peaks in front of her. She was puzzled. They weren't there yet. Why did they stop? This is it. Di Xiaofeng smiled and said. Shang Guanying couldn't help but be stunned. This is it. That's right. Di Xiaofeng nodded. He casually took out a few formation flags and threw them forward. As his hand moved, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest found that the scene in front of them suddenly changed. The grassland and mountain peaks had disappeared and were replaced by a flight of stairs that reached into the clouds. This white jade flight of stairs had more than 1,000 steps, and they couldn't see the end at a glance. Surrounding them were mountains that reached into the clouds and surrounded the white jade flight of stairs. It was like a fairyland. An indescribable feeling of vastness and magnificence lingered in everyone's hearts. As everyone walked into this area, they felt the dense primordial qi in the air. This density of primordial qi was not comparable to ordinary places. Feeling this, everyone's eyes couldn't help but be filled with deep amazement. So this was the foundation of the great aristocratic families. With such dense yuan qi, the cultivation speed here is incomparable to the outside world. When Xiren couldn't help but sigh, this level of elemental energy, they had also experienced it back in the demonic training tower. However, one had to pay an exorbitant price to enter the magic training tower, and the effect was far inferior to the D families. In an instant, everyone understood. It was no wonder that cultivators from the aristocratic families were incomparable to ordinary cultivators. Cultivating in such a place with such dense yuan qi, one's cultivation speed was naturally incomparable to that of an ordinary person. Even if they were to cultivate here, the speed of their breakthroughs would be much faster than outside. Wow, today is really an eye-opener. Shang Guanying stared with her big round eyes, her pretty face full of curiosity. Even though they had already guessed that the aristocratic families of the upper realm were definitely extraordinary, the shock in their hearts could no longer be described with words after seeing it with their own eyes. Actually, they understood that what they saw now was only the tip of the iceberg, and this tip was already very shocking. Chapter 4571. There should be a huge spirit gathering array here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Although she didn't know much about arrays, only the area around the D family had such dense energy. It was obvious that the entire D family was surrounded by the spirit gathering array. Not only that, there should be a spirit vein buried underground. Spirit vein was a spirit stone mine. Bailey Hongzhuang was sure that there was a spirit vein buried under the D family. Otherwise, even if they built a huge spirit gathering array, they wouldn't be able to create such dense energy. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of Wen Xiren and the others changed slightly. They had only come into contact with spirit stones when they were on Penglai Island. Normally, it was already very difficult for them to earn enough spirit stones for cultivation. However, the entire D family was actually located on top of a spirit vein. In addition to this spirit gathering array, it provided an extremely good cultivation environment for all the cultivators of the D family. This was a well-deserved extravagance. I didn't expect sister-in-law to know about this. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with surprise. Usually cultivators from the lower realm wouldn't come into contact with such things. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I only learned about it from books. There are indeed spirit veins buried under our Di family. And there's more than one. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with pride. In fact, all the big families are built on top of spirit veins. The spirit gathering array set up like this has the best effect. Everyone nodded in agreement. They had already sensed the effects of the pills as soon as they arrived. Let's go in. If everyone knows that you're back, they'll be very happy, Di Xiaofeng said with a smile. Then everyone didn't delay. Di Xiaofeng and the Great Elder led everyone up the white jade stairs. Walking on the white jade stairs, everyone realized that the higher they went, the denser the energy they felt. Thinking about it, the place with the densest energy must be at the top. When they got closer, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that there were people living at the foot of the mountain. The cultivators who live at the foot of the mountain are basically disciples of the branch family a few generations later. Those who live in the middle are disciples of the branch family within a few generations, while we, the direct descendants, live at the top. Di Xiaofeng saw that everyone seemed to be very curious about this situation, and couldn't help but explain. Hearing this, everyone finally understood what was going on. There really is a huge difference between the upper realm and the lower realm. Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but sigh. When she was in the lower realm, she felt that their sect was also very grand. However, compared to the Di clan, there was a huge difference. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have been able to imagine the shock of such a great aristocratic family. The upper realm has a lot more people and cultivation resources than the lower realm, so there will be some differences, Di Xiaofeng said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang fell silent. Based on their current understanding of the situation, the cultivators of the lower realm were undoubtedly the losers of the upper realm. Because they lost their competitiveness in the upper realm, they stayed in the lower realm. If possible, she hoped that her family could also come to the upper realm with her. Chapter 4572. She didn't want such a thing to happen. She didn't even want to accept that it was just a possibility. The reason why the lower realm cultivators could live so well was because the upper realm families all followed the rules. If there was a person who broke the rules one day, then everything would be gone. Di Xiaofeng obviously didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have thought of so many things in such a short time. However, he also welcomed Bailey Hongzhuang's family to the upper realm. The white jade stairs were very long. Even Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had to walk for a long time before they arrived at the residence of the Di family's direct descendant. Standing at the top of the white jade stairs and looking down at the blue clouds, everyone couldn't help but feel that the mountains were small. Following behind Di Xiaofeng and the head elder, the Di family's cultivators all bowed when they saw the two. Eldest young master, head elder. Di Xiaofeng and the head elder nodded slightly. All the cultivators who passed by all bowed. However, everyone was curiously looking at Di Beichen and the others. It was rare to see the eldest young master bring people back. Moreover, there were so many people in this area. Look, doesn't that white-robed man behind the eldest young master look a bit like the eldest young master? Yeah, I've never seen a man as handsome as the eldest young master. I didn't expect this man to not be inferior to the eldest young master at all. The woman beside that man is also a first-class beauty. I've seen many young ladies from other families before, but I've never seen such a beautiful young lady. I wonder which family she's from. Actually, that black-robed man is also very handsome. He's just a bit colder. The Di family's cultivators couldn't help but whisper. They were all guessing the identity of the person who came. After all, the person who could be brought back by the eldest young master wouldn't be simple. However, at this critical moment, they didn't know what he came here for. When Xiren couldn't help but shake his head and sigh when he heard everyone's discussion. Normally, he was also very handsome. He didn't expect that after coming here, he would be completely ignored. Forget it, who told these guys to be too handsome? Xiren spread out his hands. It wasn't that he wasn't handsome enough, but that the guys beside him were too handsome. I finally understand why Wanyan Han and the others didn't come. AI. Ao Lingxiao couldn't help but sigh. The difference between people was too unfriendly. Second brother, sister-in-law, come with me. I believe that father and mother will be very happy to see you. The smile on Di Xiaofeng's face never dissipated. He really couldn't wait to bring Di Beichun and Di Beichun to his family. Di Beichun nodded slightly. Good. However, just as they were about to leave, a figure suddenly rushed past them. After noticing the first elder and Di Xiaofeng, he stopped in his tracks. Chapter 4573. As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. They already knew that Di Beichun's mother was seriously ill, but they didn't expect her condition to be so serious. Although Dr. Wu said it tactfully, they all understood that since he said it was not good and was so anxious, they were afraid that she couldn't hold on. Dr. Wu, I've already found my brother. I believe that after my mother sees my brother, she will be able to untie the knot in her heart. Di Xiaofeng quickly said. Hearing this, Dr. Wu was slightly stunned. His gaze fell on Di Beichun, and he quickly nodded. I didn't expect second young master to be back. I'm sure madam will be very happy when she finds out. Then let's go quickly, Di Xiaofeng quickly said. At this moment, he didn't have time to tell the family head. His mother's illness was the most important thing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, Aunt's illness is indeed a heart disease, but it's already very serious. If Beichun suddenly appears, she might be too agitated and… Long before this, she had already predicted that such a possibility would occur. Di Beichun was indeed the way to untie the knot in Lin Yunqing's heart, but she was already extremely weak. If she suddenly became too agitated, she might not be able to hold on. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, Dr. Wu also nodded. That's right. I was too anxious before and neglected this point. Madam's body is now extremely weak. If there's a sudden stimulation, she might not be able to take it. As he said this, Dr. Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Miss, you've also studied medicine? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Di Xiaofeng said, Sister-in-law is the godly doctor I mentioned before. Sister-in-law, in your opinion, what should we do now? Don't go over for now. I'll go take a look at the situation first. The most important thing now is to let madam calm down and have some confidence. When her condition is slightly better, Beichun will appear again. I believe the effect will be much better. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She only knew a little about madam's situation from everyone's narration. After all, she hadn't really checked, so she couldn't make a conclusion. Miss, madam's current situation is actually very bad. Why don't we let second young master take a look? At the side, Dr. Wu couldn't help but remind her. He felt that madam was already at the end of her rope. It just so happened that second young master had returned. If she didn't go now, she might not even be able to see him for the last time. Hearing this, everyone's heart sank again. They all understood what he meant. Di Beichun's pupils shrank. He didn't expect his mother's illness to be so serious. Wife. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, his deep eyes filled with complex emotions. That was the mother he had never met before. Even though they had not seen each other all these years, she was still the mother he cared about the most. With just one call, Bailey Hongzhuang understood Di Beichun's thoughts. Beichun, don't worry. I will definitely find a way to cure Aunt. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was heavy and serious. Beichun finally came back to reunite with her. She definitely couldn't let anything happen to Aunt. She had studied medicine for so long so that she would not have any regrets. Di Beichun nodded. Listen to my wife. We'll wait outside. Chapter 4574. Di Xiaofeng knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills weren't comparable to ordinary people. Moreover, his mother was also Bailey Hongzhuang's mother. She wouldn't mess around with this kind of thing. Thinking about it, since she did this, she must be confident. Where is Auntie? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Dr. Wu and asked. Seeing that everyone agreed with Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Manager Wu sighed and didn't have any objections. Come with me. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Dr. Wu left quickly, Bewitching and the others didn't delay, and also went to Lin Yunqing's residence. However, they didn't go in and chose to wait outside. Eldest young master, second young master, Madam's condition is so serious. I'd better go inform the patriarch first. Elder De said, although he didn't understand why eldest young master and second young master believed in Madam's medical skills so much, he felt that they had their reasons. However, Madam was really too young. Although the age of cultivators couldn't be completely judged from their appearance, he was still certain that Bailey Hongzhuang was only in her 20s. At this age, could she cure the illness that even Dr. Wu couldn't? Di Xiaofeng nodded. Go quickly. Di Beichen Xiaofeng, don't worry too much. Hongzhuang's medical skills have always been outstanding. I believe that as long as she makes a move, there won't be a problem. Shang Guaninging comforted. Di Beichen nodded slightly, but his dignified face showed that he still didn't feel relieved. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Hongzhuang's medical skills, but he was too worried about Lin Yunqing. The last time I saw Mother, her illness was already quite serious. I didn't expect it to reach this point. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were slightly red. Until now, he still didn't want to believe that his mother's illness was so serious. It will be fine, Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Dr. Wu into a courtyard. After entering the house, she found that the decoration here was very elegant, and the house exuded a bit of medicinal smell. Obviously, the people who lived here must have been taking drugs all year round. That was why the whole house was filled with such a smell. In his sight, a woman was lying on a bed. Without a doubt, she was an extremely beautiful woman. Her skin was fair, and her features were picturesque. Even though her eyes were tightly shut at this moment, her brows were slightly furrowed. Even though she was unconscious, there was still a kind of sadness that could not be dispelled. Her delicate appearance made one's heart ache for her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the beautiful woman in front of her and understood why Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng were so handsome. They had inherited her excellent genes. Lin Yunqing slowly opened her eyes as if she sensed someone coming. Right now, she was as thin as a match, and her hands were only skin and bones. However, her delicate beauty was emitted to the extreme, making it impossible for people to ignore her. Seeing the young woman before her, Lin Yunqing was astonished. However, she was even more astonished. What a beautiful girl. Her soft voice was like spring water, making people feel relaxed and happy. Greetings, madam. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly bowed. Dr. Wu, this girl is? Without waiting for Dr. Wu to answer, Bailey Hongzhuang answered herself. I am a friend that young Master Xiaofeng brought back. Hearing this, Lin Yunqing's gaze changed a bit. Then, her gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang became even gentler. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.